Hi, parents. Whenever I see a problem, whether it's a problem with one of my kids in my family or a problem that I see one of my students having, um, I'm kind of a troubleshooter. I tend to like mull things over in my mind. And so I'm always thinking, trying to solve the problem. And the purpose of this video and really all these videos is just, a lot of the problems I see a lot. So, a lot of families have the same issues. And so, as a mom, my kids all take music lessons. I just want to kind of, I want you to know that you're not alone and just to offer some suggestions that might help you along your musical journey. So, my question for you today is, let's say you had a child and it was really important for your child to learn to speak Chinese, fairly proficiently, even fluently. So what steps would you take to get there? Would it just happen by accident, just because you wanted it to, or maybe you brought a few books and put them on the coffee table? Experts say the best way to learn a foreign language is actually in a complete immersion environment. So if you are able to take your family and move to China, your child could attend classes with Chinese children at school. They could, go to music and art and dance classes afterwards. They could have play dates at the park with native families. They could, just going to the grocery store, the movies, the hardware store, the signs on the street, everywhere. They would just be bombarded by the language. And even if they didn't necessarily take kind of specific language class, although depending on how old they would probably need some of that, just like our 7th graders take grammar as well. Just by being in that environment, they would learn to speak Chinese, and they would learn it really well just because of the exposure. So if you can't take your family and move to China, how would you help them learn Chinese if you're living in the United States? If you hired a tutor once a week, maybe for 30 minutes, maybe an hour, would that help? So if that's all you're doing, I hate to break it to you, but your child is probably not going to be fairly proficient in Chinese, even if they take one session from the time they're tiny to the time they leave your house, if that is the only exposure they have. So you really have to think and make an effort and choices. And sometimes they're not always easy choices about how you are going to kind of recreate that immersion experience at home to increase your child's exposure. So beyond the tutoring session, your child might need multiple sessions or a class online. Your tutor should be assigning homework, daily homework, so that your child doesn't forget anything. Maybe you could have sort of a language exchange online where your child who is trying to learn Chinese meets weekly or more than that with a child in China who's trying to learn English, and they can swap. Could you find a group of native Chinese speaking families and have play dates? Could you watch Chinese movies, listen to Chinese music, listen to Chinese audiobooks while you read along? Take just random classes on the internet in that language, not necessarily even how to speak Chinese, but how to draw a picture all in Chinese. So I hope you kind of see where I'm going with this. If your child is taking music lessons and the only exposure they are getting to music is 30 minutes once a week, I don't think that they're going to make the level the level of progress that you're going to be really satisfied with. But first of all, you do need to kind of look at your motivations. Why are you doing this? And then what is your end goal? So of course our children all have different personalities, different goals, different temperaments, and they have ideas for themselves about what's important, and that's great. And we want to encourage them just to be themselves and to grow into the best version of themselves. But as the parent, there's nothing wrong with saying, it is important for my child to have a good level of knowledge about nutrition and is great at outdoor sports like rock climbing and hiking, and that my child, can play at a fairly strong intermediate level at the piano by the time they leave my house. And that's okay. So once you've kind of established why you're doing that and how far you want to go, then you need to figure out how you're going to create that experience at home to get your child there. So really the most important thing is your child practicing? And if not, then why not? And I'm not saying that from a place of judgment, but I just kind of help you kind of think through this. So is it just because your child is giving you pushback? And if they're giving you pushback, why are they giving you pushback? Is it because that your family is so busy that you don't have time to practice? Is it just maybe a combination of things, or you don't really know how to help your child, or they are practicing, but you don't really think they're doing it right? So, in addition to practicing, if whether they're struggling with it or not, if you really want to see your child succeed at music, maybe reach out to a few neighbors whose kids all take music lessons, whether it's a same instrument or different, and get them together for duets, trios, quartets, and things. Just meet on a regular basis, at least once a week, if not 2 or 3 times a week, and just kind of have that become part of their weekly routine. Could your music teachers maybe give lessons 2 or 3 times a week for a shorter session instead of one longer session? Could you sign up for enrichment music classes through your local community center? Could you, all these things. Could you, what kind of music are you listening to at home? A lot of families listen to Christian or pop or country music. And, I'm not opposed to any genre of music, that's fine. But you want your child to be listening to the music that they're actually the specific repertoire they're working on, because that helps them kind of internalize the music. And you want them to be listening to classical music in general, because kind of those good sounds, the high artistry, you kind of want them to absorb so then it comes out. It's just like if you wanted your child to speak with a British accent, you want them to listen to people with a British accent and don't just expect them to come up with it without having a lot of good examples for what that sounds like. The piano is kind of a solitary instrument, and it requires kind of different parts of your brain than a lot of other instruments, because a lot of instruments play one note at a time and piano can play several. And so if your child's really struggling with music, then maybe it's the piano. So if this is something you're willing to consider, I've seen band and orchestra students who never practice a day of their lives outside of school, like not once, and they still make really good progress on their instrument. And that's because they're practicing an hour a day. Well, not practicing, but they are in band class, rehearsing, I guess, in band class or orchestra class, and they are playing their instrument for an hour a day. And so they're still becoming really great musicians, even if they're not working on it at home. So if you're not completely 100% sold that you want your child to practice piano, just maybe consider switching them to a band instrument or an orchestra instrument and having them take the class at the school. Even homeschoolers usually can take band through the public school. And they could switch instruments or just do both, just kind of depending on what time you have and what your child is willing to put up with, because you learn a lot from one musical instrument that applies to another. All these skills that you're learning, pitch and intonation and phrasing, you can all take that from one instrument and go to another really well. You're not you still have to kind of learn the fingerings and build from there, but your progress after learning your second instrument or your third is a lot faster than it is learning your first instrument. So those are just some things I want you to consider. Music is a language, and so how are you going to create an immersion language learning experience at home, I encourage you to write a list. And what is your goal for your child in taking lessons? So if any of this resonated with you, I hope this was helpful. If you kind of hear what I'm saying, but you're still confused or frustrated, or you have questions, I hope you'll reach out. I'm happy to help. And that's what I'm here for. All right.